At this point in the class, you've had a little bit of a taste of group work, which means that this is probably the point in the class where you're asking yourself, why do we have to do group work? In particular, why do we have to do virtual group work? This is really difficult, and I just don't understand why we've got to do it. Well, I really do understand your point. As an undergraduate student, I didn't like teamwork either. I was a pretty decent student, like many of you, and I didn't want to subject myself to the efforts of others. And also, like many of you, I often worried that I was going to end up doing more than my fair share in order to come up with a completed assignment. So I really do have some sympathy. However, over time, I've really come to see the importance of group work, not just in coursework, but group work in life. Number one, group work is a fact of life. More and more organizations use teamwork and virtual teamwork in order to get things done. So it's a good idea to start understanding how to do it properly. In terms of IST coursework, as you move throughout your IST coursework, you'll discover that we do a lot of projects that are too big for one person to complete. So if we get rid of group work, then we have to get rid of some of those real-world projects that are of real value to students. So group work is here to stay. The question is, how do we get better at group work? Having taught a number of classes that involve group work, I've come to see that there are a number of pitfalls that a lot of early groups fall into. And so let's talk a little bit about how you can avoid some of those problems. What I've discovered is that when groups first get together, everyone's trying to be friendly and collegial, and that's a good thing. But that sometimes means that when groups discuss how things should function, that people are a little bit imprecise. Sometimes people say things like, well, in terms of communication, we should all make sure to get back to one another promptly. Or we should all do our own fair share in terms of doling out the work. These are nice sentiments, but the problem is they're not really concrete. And everybody has different ideas. One person's reasonable response time to an email might be 72 hours, but another person's reasonable response time to an email might be 18 hours. And therefore, problems can occur when each person works off of their own personal vision of what is timely. The more you can try to nail things down early when you're discussing group functions, the better. Agree upon the ways in which you will communicate. Will you use angel email? Will you use outside email? Will you call one another on cell phones? Will you do online chat? Any of these are fine. You just have to agree as a group. How fast will you respond to one another? 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. Again, any of these are fine. You just have to agree upon them as a group. So take some time trying to iron out the specifics of how you will work with one another early. Much like a prenuptial agreement in a marriage, early group decision-making can help avoid problems later on. Now you might say to yourself, but why do we have to do this in IST 111S? Well, the major reason is because the stakes are so small. The group projects that you're doing in IST 111S are very small, and in terms of your overall course grade, they're a very small component. That means you get to practice group work before the stakes are high, before you're working on that important project, before you're doing a project for an outside organization. Like anything, group work gets better with practice. The more you can practice and iron out these kinds of problems early on, the better you'll be later on when it really matters.